They say the riot escalated after a medical student allegedly waved a human arm at children near a New York hospital, intensifying fears that doctors and students were stealing bodies from the grave. The mob attacked the medical spaces. Alexander Hamilton and John Jay were among the civic leaders who tried to calm the crowd, and Jay was allegedly struck in the head by a rock, seriously injuring him.
Wow.
Some estimate up to 20 dead. Hello and welcome back to the Buck Starts Here podcast that usually digs deep into the juicy stories, power plays, and wild twists that shape the presidencies of the United States. My name's Kyle, the Diego Ribiera to raise Frida Kahlo, and today we're continuing our detour into the lesser known of the founding fathers with John Jay. We're going to go through his origin story and try to hit as many high points in his life as time allows, but it's actually more than I thought we'd end up having to cover when we started digging into him initially.
It seems a lot of these gentlemen are a little more complicated than 8th grade civics class led me to believe.
It's more than just a footnote.
Yeah, for sure. John's not as exciting as his friend Gouv, but he
lot less
has
romance.
a lot of interesting experience. Less romance, more legalism, which is okay.
Right.
If you're into that kind of thing.
I mean, can't all be true crime, right?
I hear it's a kink. I don't know.
Well, where do you want to start? I guess we should probably start at the beginning, right?
It's always best to start at the beginning.
All right. Well, Mr. John Jay was born in 1745 to the Huguenot family line, right? It was the Huguenot family and the Von Corlant, I think was the other side.
French Calvinists and Dutch people.
So the Huguenots are actually a famous line.
Yes. They're a category of extremely Calvinist Protestant French folks.
And that's Peter's side. That's the father's side.
Yes,
right?
on the paternal side. And they really fight hard for strict legalist Protestantism within France, but they don't do so well. The French, it seems, are not naturally inured to this very, very strict. So we talk about like how like the Puritans and the Calvinist Huguenots were like the Puritans plus.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah,
business,
okay.
everything was business. So they came here because there was too much loose frivolity in France.
Did they also flee to New Amsterdam or Amsterdam first? Like
some of them did,
Holland or something? I think, yeah. I thought I'd read that. That was like the original place to go for religious freedom, and then eventually that train ended.
Eventually, it got too relaxed there as well.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
People dancing in the streets, smoking the marijuanas. We can't have it. Oh wait, that's Amsterdam now. Sorry.
Yeah. All right, so father Peter Jay, mother was Mary, I think, right? Mary Van Cordelant.
I don't know, maybe.
I don't know how to say that. Anyway, that was also another famous, like, distinguished line, but I didn't really see much of like what they did or why they were notable. I think they were just politically connected, is all.
At the time, yeah.
Yeah. And you'd also mentioned, I think during your research, you figured out that these guys John Jay is actually similar to us, a second generation American. So there's like a little bit of a connection.
John Jay and his father were both born in New York. And so John Jay's grandfather would have been the person who originally, I wouldn't have been called an immigrant at the time, a colonist. Right. Which is really cool because you and I are second generation Americans. And it's kind of cool to think that people are still coming here and starting families like 2 people ago. So 250 years ago, there were people whose dads were born here. And now there are people whose dads were born here, which is pretty rad.
Yeah. Big family too, which I guess kind of makes sense now that you mentioned the Calvinist roots. There's not really a whole lot else to do but have children.
You need those children to work. The children long to work in the mercantile industry.
So they had 10 children total. 7 of them did live to adulthood, which I think we were talking about this pre-show. That seemed like a high percentage for the time.
I mean, I guess it's about like shots on goal. If you have 10 and 7 survive, to me that seems like 7 surviving feels like a lot. But I think we look at a lot of families at this time, and they had 4 or 5 children and 2 survived.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe it's just a question of if you had just throw everything at the wall and hope that some of your children survive childhood. And again, it's important for people listening to know that like it was really hard to stay alive back then.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, two of the siblings actually were blinded from smallpox epidemic from 1738.
Yeah.
And
so
one of the other brothers was mentally disabled. So,
yeah,
I
so
mean,
even
of
if
the
you,
7 who lived, 3 were just handicapped.
Yeah. So 3 were really, I mean, living, and that's not to say that they didn't contribute to their families, but they weren't working jobs.
Mm-hmm.
There was not a lot of accessibility for the blind.
Yeah.
That time period. So, God, way to start with a downer.
I know, right? Actually, speaking of that smallpox epidemic, it looks like the reason why they ended up making the move to Rye, which is in Westchester County, New York. So it's near the Long Island Sound, northeast of New York City. The family moved there shortly after Jay was born, as partly to protect the blind children from the dangers and confusions of city life, which, if you think about the horse carriage racing incident.
Yeah, you don't want anybody to get hit by a car. Absolutely. Yeah. I think, too, like getting further away at a lower population, if you've already had 2 kids catch smallpox, probably the further away from other people you can get, the better you're going to feel about letting your other children out of the house.
And you know how, I mean, big cities have come a long way to be a lot cleaner than what they were. But this is back in the time where people are throwing their feces out the window.
Chamber
into
pot
the street.
out the window.
Yeah.
Yes.
So these places are disgusting.
And there's no such thing as antibacterial soap either. Just keep that in mind.
So 1790, the census on Rye gave it a total population of 986 people. That's not what there's there in the 1740s, obviously, but I mean, that gives you kind of an idea of how many people were in this. It probably wasn't a very populated area. The modern city of Rye, I think now has about 16,500 people in it. And the Jay Estate is still preserved. There's a 23-acre historical site over the Long Island Sound with a Greek Revival mansion from 1938 that you go check out.
1938. That's interesting. Which ancestor built that?
Oh,
1838. Okay.
Yeah.
That makes more sense.
Autopilot there. All right. So in Rye, that is where his education begins. And I think you have some notes on that.
Yeah, his dad decides he's pretty clever, so he starts teaching John pretty early, and like learning Latin at conversational and liturgical Latin at the age of 6. So this is because this is such a strictly Calvinist family. Literacy is really important to the Calvinists. Mm-hmm. They believe they're totally decentralized in their Puritanism. They believe that everyone should read the Bible and should read it for themselves. And at the time, the gold standard for the Bible is Latin. Obviously, most of the original texts for that were not written in Latin, but that becomes the version that gets sent around. So if you think it's really important religiously and culturally to be able to read the Bible, you're teaching your kids Latin like as soon as you can. So it's pretty interesting. He's speaking and reading Latin at the age of 16. He goes to some type of a boarding school for a couple of years. I don't know if that's like a seasonal thing.
Reverend Peter Stoops Latin School in New Rochelle.
And so they learn mostly there. I'm thinking it's probably going to be mostly like theological.
It looked like it was Reverend was his teacher, so it looked like it's a theological school.
But he would have also learned, worked on his Latin, learned a little bit of Greek. Because of learning Greek, he would have learned some of what we consider the Greek classics, but not the big histories. That was kind of like a taboo.
Really?
You don't want to have any fun while you're reading.
Oh,
it's business. Remember, history can be very interesting and fun. So
it can be if you're a nerd.
Can be if you're a nerd. We're nerds. So he eventually gets to the age of 14, and they ship him off to King's College, which becomes Columbia. So his papers are there at Columbia, in the city. And so at 14, he's in college, and there's a total of 20 students at King's College.
Should we also point out too that I think French was widely spoken in New Rochelle when he was out there. So he had to learn French too, not just Latin and English. And
so we were talking about people who learned 4 or 5 languages, and when you're tackling that when you're young is like way better.
Yeah,
It's way
especially
better
if they're
than
all
trying
Latin
to
based
do
too.
it
That
now.
makes it a little easier, I suppose.
Correct. Yeah, they weren't learning any Polish. Just
Yeah, we're speaking Slavic.
yeah, no Slavic languages.
Right.
Yeah, Slavic people don't come to this country for a long time till later. So anyway, while he's at King's College, there's there's two different styles of study that happen. The first part of his experience at King's College, like the first 2 years, the way they break it up is you only learn Latin for 1 year. That's all you do.
Mm-hmm.
And then the second year, you learn some theology and philosophy. And then the third year, you learn some European and British law. And then the fourth year, you're like doing a doctoral dissertation type thing.
Did he get to skip the first year? Because I mean, he's already
No,
speaking
he still
Latin
had to do the first.
conversationally.
He still had to do the first year.
I'd have been annoyed.
My brother was a fluent Spanish speaker when we were very young, and he took 8 years of Spanish, 4 in high school and 4 in college. And those were his favorite classes because Jay got perfect score on everything. So maybe it was like that. If I was
Right.
14 and I knew better than my peers, I'd be pretty stoked about it. So, but what's interesting is for the first 2 years, the guy that's running King's College is a lot like his theology instructor in New Rochelle, and he's pretty strict. But he leaves, and a new president of the college comes in and writes the curricula. So for the second 2 years, it's Herodotus and like all of like the big classical
all that forbidden knowledge.
The forbidden knowledge, right? So this would have been, I would think, for someone who grows up to write the way that he does, would have been a big influence on him. And
this is probably a big influence on his like views on government and politics too.
Well, democracy being a thing.
Yeah.
So he would have had a really big opportunity to see like, Sophocles and Plato, and to, understanding sort of like these different types of government that all of the educated men during the Enlightenment period were looking to for inspiration for new and equitable governance. Jay remains not a fan of democracy, like direct democracy, his entire life, which is, you wonder, did that come from King's College? More importantly, speaking of King's College, he meets two guys, Robert Livingston Jr., who becomes a lifelong friend and collaborator. And also...
That sounds familiar. That sounds like his wife's father's name.
It's a cousin.
Cousin, okay.
He meets his wife through Robert Livingston Jr.'s family. She's a cousin
Livingston was her
of
dad,
his, yeah.
Right. Yeah,
and
okay.
Governor, the Goov is at King's College with John Jay, and so this is the beginning of their friendship. So yet again, the Goov, the Forrest Gump of our
right.
the very sexy Forrest Gump. One wonders, because like we said in that episode, he had an established reputation.
Yeah.
Perhaps it started at
John Jay wasn't writing letters about his appendages for no reason.
Right? And so then he goes and he clerks after he gets out of King's College. He goes on to do a law clerk. And so that was like the what's the word I'm looking for? Apprenticeship for becoming a lawyer. We didn't have law school per se, Juris Doctorate like we have now in a bar exam. They had, you clerked for someone, and that's how you learned.
Was that Benjamin Kissam? Is that who that was? I have a note he studied law with him.
Yeah, and so he clerks and studies law, and
does it about 4 years until he gets his
3-4 years, I think. I don't have that. I didn't write any dates down. I just write down the stuff I think is cool. But I wanted to say the Jay family was seriously like in that Calvinist mercantile category. So the round hats, the Dutch masters hats guys. Yeah. I categorize everyone by their hats. And at the time they're really up in arms about the sugar tax. So what do you know about the sugar tax? Did that come up in your reading for this?
No, actually no. I had very little up until basically the next year when he gets into the boundary dispute. That's when I started finding.
Okay. So the sugar tax is like, this is like the first.
This is similar to like the stamp tax and other things. It's just an import duty on sugar, right?
I think it's important to say this. I always understood that these taxes that were levied on the colonies before we were the United States were some kind of an import tax, or they were some sort of burden placed upon us for either shipping goods or importing goods or exporting goods. But it turns out, when I read about the sugar tax, it's not a stamp tax. It's like what I have to do with the federal government for certain firearms purchases. We just call it a tax stamp now, which makes more sense to me because they stamp your document. It's like a notary. Okay. And you get a piece of paper.
I paid my taxes
with this. Okay. So here's what they do with the sugar tax. They lower the rate, but they give it a line item of enforcement. So they basically say, we're going to lower the rate from 3% to 1%. I'm just making that up. I don't remember what the numbers were. But the new law, it's a lower rate, but it pledges enforcement. And it gives the judges judges appointed by the king, the right to go after people for not paying this tax. And I think the folks who wrote it must have thought, well, you're going to be paying less. So if you're above board, then you shouldn't be worried about it.
Right.
Instead, what happens is the New York lawyers freak out because they can't get papers with these stamps on them now. Paper is one of the things that is involved. And so nobody wants to buy the paper. They don't want to pay the 1%. They don't want to get prosecuted. And so the New York City legal community loses their minds because they can't get the paper that has the stamp on it to publish their documents, because published documents are one of the things wrapped up in this law. So
it sounds like something that Eric might have covered in the original back in like Washington coverage.
So it's really funny because John Jay is clerking for these attorneys, and they can't even file anything in court because they can't buy the paper that they need to file their. So everything grinds to a halt, and this is, weirdly enough, how he ends up in the countryside adjudicating the line war. There's no work in New York City because they can't get the paper to publish the court proceedings. So it shuts down the court system in New York. And they're like, screw it. No. Let's go. So he goes on a road trip. Him and Livingston go on a road trip. And this is how.
This is how they get involved in the New York-Jersey border dispute? Okay, so this is not a good story for them then. Like, first they couldn't get work because they couldn't buy paper, and then they get involved in this, and
they're not.
It's like, well,
and
I'll talk
spoiler
real quick.
alert, this isn't going to go well either.
Yeah. No, it doesn't. So I'll just quickly go over what the dispute was, and you can kind of talk about what happened to these poor guys. But Jersey was Jersey Agreement is going all the way back to the creation of New Jersey back in 1664, and was centering on the line where the colonies should run. So Jersey was defending a 1719 line that ran from latitude 41 degrees on the Hudson to 4140 on the Delaware. And New York wanted a more favorable line running from New York City towards Easton, Pennsylvania. Jay, him and the assistant clerk, their role was technical. They didn't really do a whole lot else other than what I have here is copying grants, marking documentary evidence, keeping minutes, and then recording the answers from interrogations. The commissioners did eventually produce a compromise line closer to New Jersey's claim, though appeals and quorum problems delayed the process. And that's the notes I have.
Okay, delayed the process.
Yes, that is very.
So I want you to note that this is foreshadowing. To me, this seems to be a pattern that is developing as we talk about some of how these maneuvers happen, how people get stuff done. In what appears from my perspective as a modern person, in the absence of any kind of legal structure. So every single time something new happens, they're like, we have to convene a quorum. So will you appoint 5 commissioners and you will appoint 5 So someone like John Jay sets out the rules. You will appoint some number. You will appoint some number. I will give you 6 weeks to determine your argument, gather your documents, your papers, your maps, your first-person testimony. I was there when we bought it from the Indians. Yes. And then they're supposed to meet, and they're supposed to hash out their agreement. when they fail to reach an agreement, they, come up with some new, well, these three guys and these three guys can't get along. They're fighting in the parking lot or whatever. Throwing food at the luncheon table. We're going to replace them with some other people. We'll give you 2 or 3 more weeks to get. So this goes on and on and on. And as it's going on, the longer it goes on, the more the people who work and live on the boundary just figure out where it works for them.
Yeah, it just kind of naturally happens.
Yeah,
Borders naturally established. Yes.
Yeah, the border becomes like slowly, naturally established. And the commissioners who have been appointed on both sides, neither of them want that either. So they're they're like, heels are dug in. This only take what I want and screw the rest of you guys. It's like a Cartman from South Park all over again.
Respect my authority.
Yeah, screw you guys. So finally, like it appears to be a board. This goes on for years, but John Jay goes back to work in New York City. Some things loosen up there, and is like there's money to be made. So he goes back to work, and finally, behind the backs of the guys organizing it, some of these commissioners meet and they sign some kind of a document, and they're like, "Fine, just leave it the way it is." Well, John Jay and his partners get wind of this that they were never compensated for their time. Like they were hired under the auspices that they were going to be paid. They traveled to this place, probably had per diem receipts. Like they probably had a list. This is what you guys owe us. This is your bill. And the commissioners are like, yeah, we're not paying you.
Would you pay them? I mean, they kind of didn't actually settle anything. It kind of just settled on its own. Like, would you think they have an argument? I think they didn't want the line to be settled on its own. It kind of settled on its own.
I think the argument that they used was the papers that you gave us, we didn't file that. So because we didn't file it, now being an artist, this is like if you ask me to design a logo for you and then you don't use it, for you to say like, well, I didn't use what you drew, so I don't have to pay you. No, MFR, you still wasted my time.
Still were paid. Yep. You still paid me or hired me to do this job.
And this is because Americans have this really Calvinist work ethic background. John Jay finds this unacceptable, and so they sue. It's in court, I think, for 10 years. You can check me on that one. I know I put it in my notes here somewhere. I think it goes on for 10 years.
That long, then that means it was like after the creation of the U.S., like after the Revolutionary War.
And it's like it's still working its way through the court system.
Yes.
It's again, the more things change, the more they stay the same.
Amen.
So they withheld the paperwork. I'm sorry. What happens is the judiciary won't handle it. So New York passes a law forcing them to file the records. But they never get paid. It says in this law, you have to turn the paperwork in and you have to pay these guys, and like no one gets paid. I think I read somewhere that a trust was paid some percentage of compensation like a generation later. Just someone was in the basement of someone like, oh, we owe these J people, $50. Like just write that check. So, so that was,
wow.
That was the border dispute. It ended where the lawyers didn't get paid. And I can sympathize with the lawyers, although I can also sympathize with everyone else. Like,
yes,
lawyers didn't get paid. What a tragedy.
Yeah. Right.
I don't think that lawyers had the connotation back then that they have now.
No.
I don't think so.
No, I wouldn't think so.
They seem to be much more respected in the original documents that we're reading. It doesn't. I don't see any like jokes getting passed around. Like, hey, Kyle, what do you call 100 lawyers buried up to their neck in sand?
Not enough sand.
Right. Like I don't see any of this going back and forth in the correspondence. So.
Well, let me just do a real quick search.
Just in case.
The oldest.
What is the old? Well, the oldest lawyer joke is going to be like ancient Greece.
And 4th century BC, Greek cynic philosopher Diogenes.
Diogenes!
At an ancient Greek festival, an argument broke out over who should enter a sacred area first, a physician or an attorney. He settled the debate by pointing to the lawyer and saying, "Let the thief go first, then the executioner." He assaulted both of them.
Diogenes, the first punk rocker, the man who said, "I'd rather take a dog than a man any day of the week." Good fella. All right. Well, that's settled. But it seems that there was a little bit more. Lawyer was more of a workaday job during the revolutionary period. They weren't in some weird category where lawyers and politicians go today.
I think we just make so many of them now. There's just too many.
Too many. Not enough sand.
It's not enough sand. It's just too many lawyers.
It's just not enough sand.
All right. Man. So I think things are going to get a little quiet here until we get to the ship disaster. But before that, I do have that he was appointed Chief Justice in New York in 1977.
Yeah, we should do some fast facts in and around New York and some of his appointments.
Yeah. Then he also was president of the Continental Congress in 1778. And I did look that up to see what that was.
A job he does not want.
Job he doesn't want, and a job that doesn't really do anything either.
He hates it.
It's mostly like ceremonial from the looks of it. Like the president could not independently control Congress or appoint delegates to committees, or command the government as executive. But he did have like some abilities of like influencing whether legislation advanced or stalled. He'd be like the person meeting with the dignitaries and allies as the first member of Congress.
And he's
managing
mad.
Official correspondence.
Yeah, he's mad about it because he's really wants to be in New York State. He is a part of the provincial government there, and he's trying to organize.
He ran for the governor and lost.
Lost. Yeah.
Is that coming up, or is that
that is coming up?
Okay.
Yeah, there's no governor yet.
Okay.
So he's trying to organize the New York militia. And he's trying to convince other people in New York to agree to hire privateers to defend the New York harbor. He's helping to draft New York State's specific Declaration of Independence. He doesn't want to be president of the Continental Congress. He's got business at home. Yeah. Again, business. I've got business.
I did.
It's like the running theme for this guy.
He was appointed a colonel of the 2nd Regiment of the New York Militia in 1775, but he never was in any battle. He was. I think the exhibition at Columbia states that he was little more than a commander in name only. This is real wartime work, as you said, was political. Like he was trying to work deals, trying to get money for the part of what that title would have given him at the time. And I didn't heavily research this because I just lower on my list of stuff I thought was cool. There's some really cool stuff coming up.
Part of what I would think that would have conferred upon him would have been the ability to send orders to people direct without permission. For example, the privateers, you guys can, here's a note from me. I'm a commander.
Yeah. There's no commander in chief here who can, is the head of the military. Yeah.
So
he's not.
I would see that that would be expedient for him, and not a bad thing, but he doesn't appear to have spent any time, holding a rifle for the cause,
no.
Which is okay. It's okay. No. That wasn't for everyone. He was on an anti-spying committee for Washington.
Oh, really?
Which is funny. They called it an anti-spying committee, but his job primarily was to employ spies.
The funny thing with him too is I get the impression, because when we get to his time in Spain, some of the correspondence you sent me was him talking about the cipher he wanted to use, and it felt very amateurish. This is like what a 5-year-old does.
He's kind of into what he thinks spies are doing. Right. But it's weird because in New York he does some things that I think I would find them alarming today. One of his anti-spying activities is he sends spies to root out New Yorkers who are staying neutral. Drags them to committees and forces them to declare their allegiance to the revolution. If they refuse, he exiles them to New England.
Send them to Massachusetts. Okay.
And he's also serving as the Chief Justice of New York. So he's basically... he's doing a little judge, jury, and executioner here.
Yeah.
Which, I don't dog on federalism very often. I think at the time it was a pretty functional and logical system. I preferred it to republicanism at the time, for the time. But this is a little we're drifting into McCarthy territory.
I think that with John Jay, he was really good at being like the negotiator. But man, do not put him in charge of anything.
I don't think so. It was a little bit, but that was the work he wanted to be doing when he is elected the president of the Congress, which is like a nothing job.
Well, then
so he's like, listen, I could be busting spies back to New England where they belong.
Right. Well, in 1779, he gets his wish because that's when he gets appointed. He's sent on a diplomatic mission to Spain, and
he finally gets sent. He finally gets sent. Oh, I want to just make a footnote before we do Spain.
Yeah.
Before we do Spain, while he is, and this is not in the Federalist papers, but it is interesting to read if you can stomach the lengthy sentences. They're broke. The Continental Congress is broke. Yeah. Washington has no money, and they don't have in their laws, in their charter, they're not allowed to tax at all. They have to ask the states.
So that's why he's
can I get
Spain,
some money?
then?
So he goes to Spain to get money, and hopefully, whatever. But critically, Congress can't levy taxes, but it can print money. And this causes an interesting, and I wish Eric were here, this causes an interesting hyperinflation loop.
Yes, it's called seniorage.
Put my fake economist hat on. The concern that we won't win the war causes people to not want to buy Continental dollars.
Yes.
And when people don't buy Continental dollars, there are too many Continental dollars, so the Continental dollars lose value. Yeah. And it turns into a hyperinflation situation, and the Continental Congress can't do anything except beg the states, please give us something. And the states are like...
You can thank Abigail Adams. I think she was one of the few people buying all these war bonds and muni bonds during this time period.
But it's not, what Mrs. Adams is doing is not enough. So John Jay writes a letter to the people at large, and it is called An Address to the Inhabitants of the State of New York. And it's pretty interesting. It's one of the things that I like about his style, and this again with his diplomacy specifically. He really seems to be like a pragmatist in his heart. And I love that. So he argues both sides. He does a really great piece of rhetoric. It's 49 pages long.
Jesus.
It's only 3 sentences. I'm kidding. No. It's excessive. It's excessive in its use of punctuation. But he argues for both sides. And at the end of arguing for both sides, he says, it doesn't matter what side you're on. We want to give money or we don't want to give money. If you don't give money, we will definitely never have a nation. But if you do give money, at least we've got a shot. It's wordy, it's difficult to read, but it makes excellent arguments rooted in practical reality, and nobody buys it, and the dollar collapses. And that's when Washington says, some of you guys are going to have to go to Europe with your hats in your hands. Which is interesting because at no point do any of these guys say, we should just go door to door as the federal government and take money from people.
I mean, it'd be kind of counter to the whole thing you're doing.
I understand, but they don't do it. They're principled enough to not do it.
Because they would have known if they would have tried to institute any sort of tax that it would have just completely destroyed the entire revolution.
Right. So I just think it's interesting. Apparently no one suggests it, full stop. Like they all know better.
Well, I mean, go to the place where they have money.
They went to Europe. So they sent John to Spain. So there you have it.
All right. So John, when setting off, okay, and we can think, because I tried to find details on this and it was actually kind of difficult to find anything like really that detailed the damage or what actually happened, but you sent me some letters, correspondence from his wife.
Correspondence,
where she talks about the incident, and I'd like
she writes to her mother, "Dear Mama."
Yes.
It's just so sweet.
And I'm gonna skip into this a little bit, but
this is important. Her name was Sarah, but her family calls her Sally.
Oh, okay, good to know.
So when you see someone writing to Sally in the letters, it's to Sarah.
Okay. Let's see. So, my dear mama. Okay. So, I do want to say first off here too. Obviously, everybody had seasickness, but Mr. J, exceedingly bad. He had at least 5 weeks of seasickness during this entire journey. But the actual incident happened about 4 o'clock in the morning on the 7th of November. She says, "We were alarmed by an unusual noise upon deck, and what particularly surprised me was the lamentations of persons in distress. I called upon the captain to inform me the cause of this confusion, and that I might imagined to prevail. But my brother desired me to remain perfectly composed, for that he had been upon the deck but half an hour before and left everything in perfect security." Perfect security. Vain
Perfect.
words. Don't you think so, Mama? And indeed they were so proved, for in that small space of time we had been deprived of nothing less than our bowsprit, foremast, mainmast, and mizzenmast, so that we were in an awkward situation, rendered still more so by a pretty high southeast wind and a very rough sea that prevailed then. However, our misfortunes were only began. The injury received by our rudder the next morning served to complete them. Let my benevolent Mama imagine the dangers of the situation of more than 300 souls tossed about in the midst of the ocean in a vessel demasted and under no command, at a season too that threatened approaching inclemency of weather. I assure you that in no period of our distress, though ever so alarming, did I once repine, but incited by his, Jay's, amiable example, I gave no fear to the winds and cheerfully resigned myself to the dispensations of the Almighty. So she goes on to talk about how amazing Jay was during this.
Other people
That
also say things like this about him throughout his life. She's not
Yes,
the only one. They say that his capacity to stay calm
she says it is
is
the property
inspiring
of
to
a
those around him.
diamond.
Yeah.
It is the property of a diamond to appear most brilliant in the dark, and surely a good man never shines to a greater advantage than in the gloomy hour of adversity.
It's very sweet. I
Right?
like to imagine that they care for each other quite deeply.
So
They have a bit of an age gap, but it's not like tremendous.
I
I
have
think
an
it's like about 10
image.
years.
Oh yeah, it wasn't that much. It wasn't as much as I would have thought it would have been.
Yeah.
But I had AI generate an image of what a vessel would have looked like after it had sustained all these damages. But it's basically all the masts and the spot, the thing that sticks out in the front, the bowsprit.
Yeah, I would tell
Like that's
people probably it's
it's
everything that
basically
sticks out from the boat.
it's basically a floating hull at this point now. And it also can't steer because there's no rudder. So you can see how this could be a problem. Now, they tried to get him to guess abandon ship. They were trying to get Jay to land him somewhere and let the ship like continue like trying to fix it. But he's like, no, under no way will I ever do that. So what they ended up doing was they diverted to Martinique. I guess they were able to make enough repairs to get there. The crew is able to improvise steering gear using cable spars, chains, and heavy amounts of cordage. It took them nearly 2 weeks to get into even a usable condition. They do eventually get to Martinique, and then when they get there, a French admiral actually loans them a frigate to finish their trip. So the French stepping in and kind of saving us again. In fact, they write some really nice things about like how the capacity of the French for the assistance that they've been given, like the going above and beyond. But they finally get to Spain, and after all of this, Spain refuses to receive Jay because receiving him as an official minister of the United States would have implied recognition of American independence, and Spain was not quite yet ready to make that move.
Yeah,
So he
they
spends the
won't
next 3 years, negotiating without. Um,
yeah, they won't see him as anything other than a private citizen. Just
Something
like
like
what
that.
is a
Yeah.
private citizen supposed to do negotiating with the government?
Let's see. Spain is also deeply resistant to American claims to free navigation of the Mississippi River, and Congress had instructed Jay not to relinquish that right. Yeah, that led to more issues because the king, that was like a big sticking point for him. So they apparently spent the next few years in a weird limbo here until at least the Revolutionary War ended. But
Yeah,
from what
and
I could
then
find, it looked like he did manage to secure some money from them still.
I think he gets a little bit of money from them on the down low. They they want to play
That's a
their
pretty good
cards, I'm sure.
negotiating.
Yeah, they want to play their cards, I'm sure, to get on both sides. I think my favorite part about all this is when he finally gets back, he's got a bunch of bills, and Ben Franklin has to pay the
Hmm.
bills.
Oh,
So, um,
it's probably a frigate rental from
Franklin's
France. How much does that
Franklin's
cost?
forced to pay the bills for Jay's problems.
That's
And I
awesome,
don't know why, because John Jay is like one of the richest people on in the colonies at the time.
right? Did you see what his title was that
No.
they gave him for Spain? The Minister Plenipotentiary to
Oh,
Spain.
yeah, I did. I didn't know what that meant. I didn't know if it was
I
like
don't
a made
either.
up title or if that's something that they use. I saw that and I'm like, I don't know what that is.
All right. Well, I thought you would have known, but I guess I should do
No,
a
I
quick
don't know
search on that.
everything.
It is a diplomatic agent or representative invested with full power and authority to act on behalf of the government. Okay, so it's just an envoy. An
It's an
envoy who's
envoy,
got
but
the
not
ability.
not an
But he's
official
got.
envoy.
It's an envoy who has power of attorney.
Mm.
So he's
Fair
allowed to make
enough.
deals. He's got
He
the
can make
authority to
deals.
make deals.
But
Which
he's been
I guess makes
instructed not
sense.
to make any deals.
No, he's been instructed not to give up certain rights.
Yeah. Well, this is, Spain is kind of gives a little bit of trouble, but this is important too. Is one of my notes on his time as a diplomat to Europe. We have to remember that we have enormous border. We don't think of it like this anymore because we're a continent, but at the time, what becomes the United States has huge borders with Spain and
There's
France.
nothing but borders.
And it feels so weird
to
say that we have huge borders with Spain and France when modern Americans, we think of Spain and France being on the other side of the Atlantic from us.
Right.
So they're both very important, and they're jockeying for keeping the land that they have. They would be those who saw ahead that we were a threat to them keeping that land certainly had reason to believe so.
Right.
So,
well, speaking of the war and our neighbors, then the next note I have then is the Treaty of Paris, which John Jay was part of that group. He was with John Adams and Benjamin Franklin as the main negotiators for that.
And the Treaty of Paris, like, John Jay doesn't think it goes so well. Like, everywhere he looks, he sees the individual states doing things he thinks are in violation of the Treaty of Paris. Like, he spends a lot of time trying to convince the governors and the leadership of various states that, like, you guys have to respect this treaty, because when the United States signs a treaty, your state has also signed that treaty.
Oh, so it's
like really hard to convince people in the beginning how this is supposed to work. So he goes on this like, writing, speaking, yelling tour, trying to get them to understand that treaties that are confirmed at the federal level must be upheld by states. And if the states write laws that violate those treaties, they have to be repealed. You can't have this law.
Right.
But the states are doing it all over the place. So everywhere John Jay goes, it's stuck in his craw. Someone's violating the Treaty of Paris.
This makes sense then why, because I remember, like we talked about Britain, like not respecting a lot of things either, like hiring a bunch of native tribes to come in and like occupy forts that they had abandoned. But it makes sense now why they would have been doing that. It wasn't them being antagonistic necessarily. It could have been in response to some of the things that some of the states were doing, because they just didn't understand how a federal agreement worked.
Yeah. And I mean, so it's trying to convince someone how, and I think like the Federalist Papers become part of like this. We're trying to get people to understand how this works, because, and especially after like Washington dissolves the army. And so the states, if the states aren't cooperating with these treaties,
for the whiskey tax rebellion, but
right, they did bring it back. They did bring it back for the whiskey rebellion. But in the meantime, because we don't have a standing army any longer, the states are doing these little things they're not supposed to be doing, and the British and the French and the Spanish are doing little things they shouldn't be doing, especially out on the fringes. And the diplomats don't have any, without an army, they don't have any bargaining chips.
Right.
Like, they're like, hey, knock that off. And the Spanish and the British are like, or what?
Yeah, what are you going to do? You and what army?
You and what army? Exactly.
Yeah.
So they failed to resolve a lot of conflicts as a result. And
but they did do some really good things in that. I mean, getting the formal recognition from Britain was obviously good.
Formal recognition from Britain was good.
They got generous western boundaries, access to the Mississippi River. The treaty recognized the United States as free, sovereign, independent states, and then it also set boundaries that enabled western expansion. So, I mean, like, we got some stuff out of it. And what I found really fascinating about this, too, is that John Jay was supposed to be, like, learning on this trip. He wasn't supposed to be instrumental, from what I gathered, like, when he initially took part. But it sounded like he ended up playing a pretty pivotal role. He was the one who was skeptical of France and Spain's territorial goals and helped push for more favorable terms for us.
Yeah, and it's clear that he's really committed to what become his fellow Federalists see as the best way to set things up. And I think it's interesting because he's such a pragmatist, as compared to like Franklin, who's like an idealist, firebrand, crazy person. Jay's like he's like the polar opposite of that. He's pushing in the opposite direction, and he's saying like, we need to have restraint. We need to have like a strong case for being unified by our Americanness. Like he's really pushing for that idea. And we've talked many times in, as we go forward through history, how this idea of a unified American nation becomes inspiring to other people who are trying to understand how to create a nation out of geography and experience. So you're right. He didn't seem like he was going to be important on this trip. And he seems to push for a lot of things that become really central to how we operate.
The other thing I know I saw too when I was reading through, at least with the Treaty of Paris, I think I could be wrong. I know the Jay Treaty was not received well, but it looked like this one wasn't received very well either. And I guess that makes sense then. That would be the case if the states were having a hard time deciding to follow it.
It was definitely not received well. And, you have to wonder, this is like, it's brand spanking new, right? So, I'm some guy who lives in Georgia, and I like the idea of self-governance. I'm not crazy about staying a colony. I'd like to be my own sure, guys, but do I really understand what that means? Because suddenly now some guy in Washington, D.C. or not in New York, because it's not Washington, D.C. yet, because there isn't one, but in New York is signing a treaty with some other country on my behalf. Who the hell do you think you are? Like I can see
it's your elected representative, dude. That's what you voted for.
Think about what we haven't voted yet.
The first time that's happened, though.
People haven't voted yet. They haven't for generations, or even at least for
Well, they've voted to send their representatives to the Continental Congress.
Some of them did.
Decisions that have been. I guess there was a couple. Yeah, but Georgia was one of them.
Well, what I'm saying, no. I mean, some of the people generally. Certainly the people who wanted to stay British, so half didn't vote to send anybody to the Continental Congress. They wouldn't have been looped into any of this. They're certainly not reading the publications. They're going out and going to get the book,
Right.
They're so these people, it's brand new for them, And what about all those people we always talk about, the marvelous middle, right? Guys like you and I who are like, I don't care who I write the check to, just leave me alone.
Yeah. Right.
Now some new guy is bossing them around. So, I mean, I can't imagine that any of the early treaties were particularly popular. On account that, like, it would have been the way we were running things was such a completely new. If Britain signed a treaty with someone, unless you were a merchant or a privateer or you were in the military, you're a farmer in colonial Britain, in the United States or India. And Britain signs a treaty with France. What does it have to affect you?
Right.
Nothing. The United States, the new United States, signs a treaty, and it is everybody's business. That's brand new for people. I don't know. It's just, I keep trying to think back to that. Like, sometimes I see this stuff and I'm like, what was wrong with these people? And then I realize that, like, I probably would panic too under these circumstances.
Like, wait a minute, we agreed to this? Like,
I didn't agree to this. That guy, maybe. He could pay for it then. I'm not paying for this. How many times have you heard it? I just said it yesterday.
But then the federal government took on all the states' debts, so that should have made things a little bit better.
Well, I'm sure. But this is another, like, you take some time for that to work its way in as well. And that's, I think... that's one of those things that, like, arguing for the strong federal power, that was a brand new thing in this idea that, like, maybe some people who fought and supported the revolution believed they were just going to get a free-for-all out here. Right. Certainly there were some guys, right?
Some people still think that. I mean, there's still people Appalachian Mountains that feel that way.
The Appalachia, also, I will direct you to the Republic of Slowjamistan.
There you go.
That guy's a ton of fun.
All right, we are running low on time here.
We are running low on time.
We're gonna have to sprint to the end if we're gonna get through all this.
To the end. We're gonna run over just a little because ratification. I think it's worth quick noting that it's Jay's idea to deny the presidency to foreign-born Americans who were not citizens at the time of ratification.
Oh, he's the one who gave it.
He's the one who does that. He's the guy.
All right,
Mr. Second Generation. He says, not you guys.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that was his big contribution to, you know, other than foreign affairs. He really stays in foreign affairs. It seems like once he goes to Spain, that becomes his thing. So, all of this time that he's arguing, even though he's doing some stuff that's like a little bit weird, as far as like spies and miscegenation of like bad ideas, and I guess what I would call like his McCarthyist opinions about stuff. But he has this overall message that I really like. And his message is, he says, geography favors union. So the country belongs to one people, and he defines nationality as borders, language, and culture. People who share that nationality are stronger together. And this is his pitch to the states while people are adjusting to all of the new rules. And the states don't necessarily want to do, they want the states represented. They want to do their own business, a lot of them. But he argues that if you have a national representation, it gets the best people from the entire geography. And he's talking about diplomats specifically, which is really interesting because he sees the nation as the thing that functions as a representative of all of us on the world stage. And I think that he's, from what I read, maybe it's just that I've spent the last week reading what he wrote about it, really sees a global community, like maybe like some future that, why would you choose the best man from New York? He might be number 5 out of the nation. Choose the best man from the whole nation to go abroad. And and know that the best man will have our interest. And because he shares our geography and our culture and our language, he'll be our best representative. And I really like that. So I think there was, for someone living in a time who could have not ever imagined the speed at which our world today conducts business, and the global community that we live in now, that we will never be rid of. He was really doing his best to set us up for now, whether that paid off or not.
He used the diplomatic angle instead of like an economic angle, which I think would be something that speak to everybody.
It's really interesting because he seems to see, maybe because of his lifetime in sort of mediation, legal mediation and negotiation, that like that's the thing that you really need to, like, that's the baby that you need to swaddle and take care of, versus maybe the economy will handle itself, especially if you've got slaves.
All right. Well, he had a kind of a weird take on slavery from what I could see. He was instrumental in getting it abolished in New York, but he did it in a way that took a very long time, as we mentioned earlier. His personal views were very puzzling. It's almost like he didn't have a problem with the institution. His issue was that it shouldn't be forever, if that makes sense.
He's in this camp, and it seems to be like the popular hedging camp, where they say, well, we know it's morally wrong, but it's economically the thing that we need. So we're not going to upset it now, but let's plan to phase this out in the future. How do you phase out the chattel ownership of your fellow humans? Because that's what he's basically asking for, is to phase it out over time.
I'm looking more specifically to the incident with Benoit, the boy he purchased in Martinique. And he wrote like a whole manumission for the guy. In this document, he wrote that the children of men are by nature equally free and cannot justly be held in slavery, but yet he still required the guy to serve 3 more years to him for basically to recompense him for the money he paid buying him. Like,
yeah. So let's do like the quick on that. He finds himself in Martinique, and he buys a human.
Yeah, that was when the ship was shipwrecked. Proceeds
to hold this human responsible for the debt of the money that he paid
to purchase
Correct.
him. Yeah.
And the way he seems to view it is this is an agreement. He's entered into agreement with this guy. I will buy you for the however much money, and when you've worked off that much money, then you've paid me back. And it's like he wants to be seen as a benefactor.
Right.
But it's like,
Yeah, you're still
Can
participating.
the slave really say, "Oh, I don't think that's a good deal. I don't want to be an indentured servant to you for 3 years."
Right. But you've also now by participating in it, you've now created a market for other people to go and find more Benoits to go and sell to you, whether you agree with the situation or not. Like by participating in it, you are basically giving it your
It's hard for
blessing,
me. It's
right?
hard
You're
for me
voting
to.
with your dollars.
It's hard for me to guess if this was something that he did because, maybe he wanted to see if it was possible. Maybe if that went well, could he convince other people to do that? Was there some like sort of secret mission there, or was it just like to assuage his own feelings of guilt? But he just was too. You have to sing for your supper.
He seemed to really care about making sure that he got his money back.
He
from
had
this
a
purchase.
ton of money. Yeah,
right?
And I think I mentioned this to you outside of this recording that if you've got a ton of money, like don't split hairs about it. Just buy the guy's freedom. Be done with it. I don't know. Buy the guy's freedom and then give him a job and say, "Here's your salary."
Yeah.
Maybe. Yeah. I don't know.
And I'll give you a reduced salary until you pay off the debt.
I'll give you no salary till you pay. No, because it's not a debt.
I know,
the slave doesn't owe the guy. I know. Yeah, it's really difficult. It's an interesting. He does go on like a tour. He goes on like a tour adjudicating various like arguments, Supreme Court type stuff. Because the Supreme Court convenes. He becomes the head of the Supreme Court, but there's nothing to hear. So the Supremes go off and they go on a tour and they go and they do stuff in the circuits.
4 cases that I have notes on that I can breeze through real quick if you want to hear.
I think those are, so those are cases that they would have seen those in the circuit courts. So they go through the circuit courts and they ask, because they don't have anything better to do with their time. And then eventually the Supreme Court starts adjudicating itself because it doesn't have anything better to do. They start making up rules for themselves.
Well, I think it was they did set some interesting precedents too. Like Washington asked for advice involving France and neutrality, and then Jay and the other justices declined to give advice, and that's what
they
set
say
the
that giving
advice
would be unconstitutional. Yep.
Right. The Henfields case, the first major criminal prosecution in federal courts.
Okay, so this is so that comes from this period as well, and it's kind of interesting. This is 1792 Invalid Pensions Act.
Oh, okay.
That's that becomes what we now understand to be the separation of powers between the Supreme Court and the executive. That reviewing the pension claims was an administrative task, not a judicial task.
So he spends a lot of time as a justice saying, "I won't do these things."
Yeah, he does. He turns a lot of stuff down. And
it feels like they were trying to find something for him to do, and he's like, "No, this is not what I'm doing."
Yeah,
just because I don't have anything to do now doesn't mean I'm going to do these little things now.
He eventually rules. The Supreme Court rules that they do have the constitutional right to review acts of Congress, which is really interesting. Because now, when you hear this phrase, Congress is passing something, but it's pending judicial review. This is something we still do today. Because part of that Invalid Pension Act was that we won't do the work for you, but we'll review it, and if we decide it's constitutional, you can do it. And it's almost like preempting a guarantee that you won't get sued about it later. So they do give themselves a little a little bit of a process in there, and we still talk about that. So it's kind of a cool precedent that we still have. But they go into the circuit courts and they can't even really find anything to do in the circuit courts. So ratification was cool. The Federalists and the Anti-Federalists are having a hard time. So it's the guys who want a strong federal oversight and the guys who don't. And they're fighting and fighting and fighting. And Jay finds himself yet again in the position. Looks right like New York and New Jersey. Everybody is like only wants their own thing. And it's stressing everybody out. They can't get to an agreement. So Jay takes a really clever position. He splits the baby and he tells the Anti-Federalists, go ahead. You go ahead. You go home and write down everything you want, all of it. Rewrite the whole thing for all I care. And they come back and they've got a stack of amendment documents. They're like, they flop it down on the table. and the table bends under its weight. And he says, well, this is just so much. We're going to take a 6-month break. Everyone's going to go home and read it all. And then we'll come back after 6 months and we'll reconvene. And that afternoon, the Constitution was ratified, 30 votes to 27.
So throw it all out. Nice.
I thought that was a really,
sounds like
it was the same stalling tactic that was used against him. He took it back.
Managed to get it to work.
Yeah.
Nice.
And I really enjoyed that. I thought that was great. So yeah, that was my ratification. So the Doctors Riot.
The Doctors Riot happened in 1788. So this is like a couple of years before he ends up joining the Supreme Court. But there's a riot in 1788 in New York that became like rid of the public anger over grave robbing incidents for medical science. So like doctors are wanting to,
we should do a whole grave robbing episode.
This is the same thing Leonardo da Vinci, I think, was doing in secret.
Everybody did it.
Stuff. This is going on in like the Renaissance, like pretty big.
It goes on all the way through like the 1960s when hospitals started creating endowments where we collect organs for this purpose. Yes.
These are secondary sources on this. I don't have anything primary here. This is from
Science
Institute, Science History, and History.com. They say the riot escalated after a medical student allegedly waved a human arm at children near a New York hospital, intensifying fears that doctors and students were stealing bodies from the grave. The mob attacked the medical spaces. Authorities tried to protect the doctors by placing them in jail for their own safety. Alexander Hamilton and John Jay were among the civic leaders who tried to calm the crowd, and they say that Jay was allegedly struck in the head by a rock, seriously injuring him.
Wow.
Later accounts say Sarah Jay described severe wounds to his forehead.
Sarah's like, they clobbered him.
So somehow got involved in this giant medical riot and got beamed in the head with a rock.
What was the outcome? Just like a few people got like bopped in the head and then it dispersed.
I kind of stopped paying attention after Jay. I think once Jay got taken out by the rock, I stopped paying attention to it. I mean, I suppose we can look that up real quick.
I mean, I'd be curious to know. It seems like this would have been a great opportunity for him to push for some kind of a new rule or.
So this mob eventually broke into the hospital after becoming incensed, finding several bodies in various stages of mutilation. They pulled Richard Bailey's assistant, Wright Post, and a number of the students into the street, where the mayor of New York City, James Duane, intervened and ordered them escorted to the jailhouse for protection. Wow. 3 rioters, 3 militiamen died in the confrontation. Some estimate up to 20 dead. Protesters destroyed all the available human specimens.
Wow.
Yeah.
No legal ramifications, though. No laws passed. No new.
No, nothing like that I saw.
Interesting. Okay. I feel like if something like that happens, that. There should be some sort of long-winded administrative statement from
let's see. The city fathers were blah, blah, blah. A year later, in 1789, a statute was finally put into law, codify the proper treatment of corpses with harsher punishments imposed for those who violated it. So they did.
Don't worry, everyone. We've passed a law, and if we catch the medical students digging people up and mutilating them, they're going straight to jail.
No. They go to the pillory or be publicly whipped, fined, or imprisoned.
Wow.
Yeah, the pillory was still around.
The pillory was still a thing. I guess I forget about that.
All right.
Oh man, that's where street urchins throw rotten fruit at you.
Yeah. Yes,
in
exactly.
the stocks.
Did we get to his appointment as envoy extraordinaire to Great Britain?
No.
I think this is around the time when he was doing the John Jay Treaty.
The John Jay Treaty is an unfortunate situation. This is another case of everywhere he goes, he sees the states in violation of the federal agreements.
This is him in. I'm talking about his time in Great Britain when he was actually there in Britain and the angry mobs that were following him around there.
Yeah, he's unpopular.
He was hanged in effigy by angry mobs, and apparently he said that he could travel by the light of his burning effigies.
Yeah, it's like so. Yeah, so he's basically like, guys, the states are still violating the Treaty of Paris, and we've got like problems on the horizon.
Yeah,
And so they ship him over there
yeah.
to
I don't want to get too much
get
into it because we
yeah
covered it already in the Washington episode. We talked
yeah
a lot about this one
to
already.
get some of this done. But it's funny because he's let's see. He's got a lot of people on his side here. So Federalists, like Alexander Hamilton, side with Britain, and Republicans like Thomas Jefferson favor France. But both sides want to stay out of France and England's business. So it's a rare case where the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists are like, please, Mr. J, go over there and get us out from this entanglement. We do not want to be in it.
I think that just
which
speaks
is pretty
the amount
cool.
of people being hated on both sides. I think just means he did a really good job of actually negotiating a good deal.
He did, and he writes a declaration for Washington to declare neutrality, which you guys covered. And they're just like, we're done. Unfortunately, people in the States are mad still because the British Navy starts kidnapping American sailors and pressing them into military service. Which they shouldn't be doing, but yeah, whatever. So no, he's angry. Everyone's angry with him, and it is what it is. He did. So that's, I guess, a sign of, what did they say? It's a good agreement when the seller thinks they didn't get enough money and the buyer thinks they paid too much.
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So that's, kind of the thing. I've
got two more points here
quick
to cover,
points. Okay.
And we can wrap up. There's the 1800s Stop the Steal scheme that Hamilton brought to Mr.
that time the founding fathers did it January 6th.
Yeah. So Hamilton wrote to Governor Jay. He is trying to get him to call the existing legislature back into session before the new Republican legislature took power. This is when he was governor of New York. He wanted them to change how New York chose their presidential electors so that way they could shift it to a district-based system that would potentially give the Federalists enough electors to stop Jefferson from winning. Hamilton said Jefferson's success would endanger the fate of the government and wrote that it would not do to be overly scrupulous. And then Jay obviously refused to act.
Yeah, Jay refuses to do this, and he says because it would be changing the law after the fact if the law's been seen out. So
he said he's proposing a measure for party purposes, and he did not think it became him to adopt it.
Yeah, so it's kind of the Republicans who were the Anti-Federalists. The Anti-Federalists become the Republicans, and they sweep New York City, and so all of New York's electors now are going to be Republicans instead of Federalists. And the question of would you allow the old group to make vote one last time, do it one last time for the team.
Yeah.
But I found most interesting, I guess I had forgot about this, or maybe I never knew it. The president and the vice president, they were not a unified ticket.
No.
You voted for them.
They used to just be the runner-up.
You voted for them separately. And
no, you vote. I thought it was you. Whoever was the runner-up was the vice president, at least for the first couple of times.
Right. So not right. I guess that's what I mean. You vote for them separately, like they're individuals that you would vote for or not vote for, versus a party group, a pair. So Jefferson and Burr are tied, and the Federalists think they could push Burr around, so they want him to be at the top of the ticket. But the Republicans want Jefferson because he's their guy. So it's an interesting. They were trying to get
Adams's re-election.
They're trying to. They think they're trying to swap the order of operations.
Oh, so they're just trying to switch to
But it doesn't matter. It's still, you can't do it. Like, you're not allowed.
Yeah.
You're not allowed to do
you can't change the laws after the fact.
And this is, I think it's important to say too, this is after John Jay becomes governor of New York and unseats Clinton.
Yes.
The first time he ran for governor of New York against Clinton, there were two recounts and Clinton came out on top, and someone offered him to take it to court and he took a pass. So John Jay is just against this kind of shenanigan. He's like, the paper says you lost, you lost. Like, he's pretty, and I appreciate that. So that was on my list as well. And
and then in 1801, I mean, we're here. He's retiring.
Now we're here.
He
quits.
He told Adams He told Adams he believed that the federal judicial system remained defective and that he lacked the energy, weight, and dignity needed to support national government. Cited his health as making him incompetent for the fatigues of office, and they asked him to continue, so he stepped down, retired from public life. They moved to Bedford in Westchester County, New York. They'd acquired nearly 750 acres near present-day Katana through the inheritance of purchase, and they renovated a farmhouse for retirement, moved there in 1801.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, his wife, Sarah, she had been declining
she'd been
years
ill.
health-wise. She died suddenly on May 28th of 1802, so it was only a year after they'd settled when his wife passed away. John never remarries.
No, he just hangs out. He's got 5 surviving children at this time.
He spends time on his homestead, focusing on agriculture, family, religion. I think in 1819, he publishes a letter about slavery, saying it should not be introduced or permitted in any new states.
The only public comments I could find that he makes after his retirement and Sarah's death is he is publicly and vocally disappointed by the War of 1812.
I can imagine.
I mean, you can see your life's work. Getting flushed, right. Or so it would seem at the time. I think. I mean, looking back, obviously,
we just beat them. Why are you going?
Why
after
are we
them
doing
again?
it again? Yeah. No. And then he comments publicly. His letter about slavery is on the admittance of Missouri. To
a lot of people had things to say about that. Yeah,
he says I think he hopes that he will have some weight there. He says that no slavery should be permitted in any new states coming into the Union, going along with his try to phase it out. So gradual abolition, I think, is what he called it. He doesn't get what he wants. There's a cockamamie compromise. So Missouri gets admitted as a slave state. Maine gets created as a new free state out of a chunk of something else. Some chunks.
It used to be Massachusetts' land. They ended up having to give it up in order to keep the balance.
And then slavery is banned in the Louisiana Territory, but only north of the 36th parallel.
Stupid compromise.
So I can imagine he writes this impassioned letter, as all of his letters were. For someone who was apparently so calm and such a diamond in real life, this guy was a furious writer. He's very impassioned in his writing.
That's the place for passion.
I could just
on the page.
Only imagine, unfortunately, how pissed he was when they reached that compromise. It just oh
God,
come on, guys. So, and then he continues to write to Adams for the rest of his life. So everything we know about him, anything we can find about him, there's nothing public after those 2 statements, 1812 and slavery, War of 1812 and slavery. And he writes back and forth with Adams. They're very different. Jay becomes very deeply religious and very. He
becomes the president of the Bible American Bible Association from 1821 to 28.
He becomes very premillennialist and apocryphal, and he's very Adams remains a little more pragmatic about the whole thing. They commiserate on their global events, and I skimmed some of their letters from both archives. And it's just a couple of grumpy old men, being grumpy, sitting on their porch, being grumpy, yelling at clouds together. And I thought, that's not a terrible way to see out an eventful life, to have at least one solid comrade with which to
complain about the way things are going.
Talk about the weather.
Yeah.
So, I thought I was pleasantly surprised. For a guy that I knew very little about, other than he was the first
he touched a lot
Supreme
of things.
Court. He really did. And I think I'm starting to understand in my late age now that diplomacy maybe is I should have paid more attention to diplomatic stuff in the news. It seems to be much more important now than it was earlier in my life.
It seems to me like to be a good diplomat, you got to put aside some of your personal convictions.
Yeah, I can imagine how snubbed I would feel if I had gone through a shipwreck and all of that insanity just to get to Spain and have them be like, we won't accept you as the diplomat of your nation. But instead they give you some weirdo title and they're like, we'll see you as a private citizen. When I read that, I thought, did he even go then? Did he just go home? I would have just been like, screw you guys, I'm going home. And he didn't. He went. and did the best he could with what he had. And I don't always do that well in my own life, so I think I admire reading about someone who like is effective in that way.
Yeah.
You know?
I agree.
I'm a temper tantrum thrower. Put your surprise face on.
Right.
Me? Dramatic? Never.
I think then this is taking us to the point then John Jay dies in his home, Bedford, New York, May 17th. It may have been May 16th. I think I saw one source that used that date. 1829. They say he died, he was stricken with palsy, which is most likely a stroke.
I think that was almost always a stroke.
Yeah. And they died shortly afterwards.
And you can go see the house.
Mm-hmm.
The house is still there.
Yep.
It's a publicly tourable building, yes.
I think I saw there's like a 23-acre estate still available to like
Greek Revival house.
Yeah.
Check out some cool, maybe a nod to some of that history education he got at King's College, but I like a Greek Revival house. It's good stuff.
All right, well, that's going to do it for today's episode. And we should be starting our Lincoln schedule, our recordings again here in early June. So this might be the last one we hear before we get back to Lincoln. While you're waiting for that, please let us know if there's anything we did miss in the story of John Jay. If there's any other interesting stories that you've heard, let us know in the comments. Send us an email, buckstartsherepodcast@gmail.com. Give us a like, sub on your favorite platform. We'll see you all soon.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Produced by China Shop Productions.